Hi, and thanks for joining me for this demonstration of PrintVis. We'll take a look today at a full walkthrough of PrintVis, including an introduction to the Role Center, as well as creating a new job and putting it all the way through from quoting over to invoicing. Now that I've logged into my Role Center, a few quick things to point out. Obviously, you can see it's browser-based. Up top, I opened up a tab, I typed in my link, it took me to a login screen where I was able to type in my username and password and log in. The screen should look very similar to other Microsoft products if you're using any. Obviously, you can see you have a whole structure on the top, very similar to Outlook or Word or Excel, with kind of an action ribbon where you can jump to the things that are important to you. It also shows me a few things when I log in, including the company that I'm logging in at. If you notice in black in the upper left, it says Dynamics 365 Business Central, being the product that PrintVis is embedded with. So there's a full accounting package, obviously built and maintained from Microsoft, as well as what company I'm in, the JM PrintVis Unlimited. Business Central or PrintVis, and the words are interchangeable really for the sake of today's purposes, allows you to maintain multiple companies. So for example, if you have a label division and a packaging division, or a print division and a publication division, some people also may maintain that their shipping fleets are in a separate company and run a separate P&L. So all of those things are very easy to do. You can simply adjust those in your settings. I can come through and select my company information and grab a different company, and I'm off and running. I can also personalize my screen, and I can add in things that are relevant to only me. The system ships with tons and tons of role centers in it. PrintVis has spent a lot of time and effort and money developing role centers, meaning the role that you play in the company, they have picked and chosen the things that are important to you to put in. So when you log in, you can see the things that are relevant to start your day. I am logged in as if I'm a coordinator or an estimator or a planner. I know that most estimators or planners wish they only had one or two things in their inbox to deal with, like this screen says, but for the sake of today, we'll look at that. This is also totally customizable on a per user basis. You may end up with multiple people who you default to give the same role center, and they customize to have their own look and feel. The other things you'll notice on the top are all this information that's here. So if I wanted to jump into doing PrintVis case management or order management, or look at my shipments or do purchasing, there's some other videos that explain the concept of what a case is, but just a brief refresher. A case is kind of an overall workflow or a briefcase. It's going to include all of your quotes, your estimates, your work orders, your production orders for one specific customer for one specific job. You could obviously have multiple jobs in it. It'll become more apparent as we get into it, but there is a whole video series explaining that as well. If you don't like the things that are there and you want to customize it, I can click on the little 3 dashes, also known as a hamburger, and it'll allow me to open up and customize more things. So here you can see, as a coordinator, all the areas that I can jump into. Things that are important may be my customers or my contacts, or I want to see purchase orders or quotes, or I want to set certain tasks for different users or tasks that have been set for me, all of which are very, very easy to default and have up here on my main role center when I log in. So pick and choose the things that are relevant to you as you start your day and put them right at your fingertips. You can also do this down below with all of this information. You may want to go through and have a planned versus unplanned capacity chart or a customer list. The system does integrate obviously seamlessly with other Microsoft products. So have your IT staff write you some Power BI reports. And if you don't have a IT staff, then come back and we can work with you to write some Power BI reports. We can also put in other items that you would want. We can use Flow or Power Apps and have anything that you really want to default and appear at your fingertips appear. So very, very simple to find the things that you want to find, to do the things that you want to do. The final thing I'll point out before I start doing a little bit of real work will be the search capability. So I can come along and I can actually have this search icon up here. I can click search, and now I type in any word that I want. I type in the word sale, for example, and here's everywhere in the system that the word sale appears. And you can see it's showing me what it thinks is relevant, but it's hiding quite a bit of data. So go to pages or tasks, I can see all 50 things involving the word sale. Or if I wanted to come in and see role center, I can type in role, And now here's a list of profiles or role centers. I talked before about the fact that you default people into buckets based on the role that they play. Here are all the role centers that default. So for example, if you're a bookkeeper or a business manager or in HR or inventory or manufacturing, and then if I come all the way down, you can see here all of the ones specific to PrintVis. So if I were an estimator or a planner or a coordinator, all of these things are then defaulted in for the role that you play, and then that individual user, based on the permissions that you give them, can go through and customize as you need to. So hopefully that explains a little bit about kind of the login screen, the role center, and where things stand currently. You can see this is all live data, these live tiles that appear. So if I, for example, wanted to see anything that I'm responsible for, I can click Cases Responsible, and it will open up the one case in my list that I'm responsible for. If I wanted to get rid of the cases that I'm responsible for and show all cases, then I can default and see all the cases in the system simply by eliminating a filter. Any of these grid views that you see in the system, you'll notice a button at the top middle of my screen that says Open in Excel. You may have some Excel jockeys in your company who don't want to learn how to do things only inside of PrintVis. So fine, let them export to Excel. They can manipulate however they choose, and then they can re-import back into the system seamlessly. There's a whole nother video series showing that as well. Or I can come through and build filters for anything that I would want. So here you can see what views that I want. I can add filters based on who's responsible, or who's the coordinator, or what's late, or who the customer is, or any other parameter that you set. So when I look at these, I can immediately see tons and tons of information. Now I'm putting on my role as kind of a CSR or a sales rep, and if I want to start tracking where certain things are, or a customer calls in and wants to know where something is, very simple for me on this list to see with just one click. They could give me their order number, and I could search by order number. They could give me their quote number, and I could search by quote number. I can also search by customer number, customer name, or job name. So it's very simple. I can then sort this just like you can in Excel, ascending, descending, go all the way through. So here, for example, if I'm looking at ID number 230, ID is just an internal placeholder that the system defaults. We have to have somewhere to start storing the data in the database. Here you can see ID 230 tells me I've got quote 76. It's also known as order 166. This is job name WMS. And I can see that it's for Progressive Home Furnishings and the status of it. The status codes we'll look at more in depth in a little bit, but you can see status codes are something that you set based on where it's going to be inside the company. This one defaults to be ready for planning, and I can see that it's sitting with this person of Paul Planner. So if I want to see more information about Paul Planner, I can simply click, and it will show me that the person name is Paul Planner. I could have their extension number, I could have their email address, or any other information here if I needed it. But now, again, coming back to the role as a CSR, your customer calls in and wants to know where's the WMS directed demo, the job that you're due in production. You can see, oh, it's actually over in planning. Let me go talk to Paul Planner. I'll find out a due date and I'll come back to you. Or another customer calls in, the Canon Group, and wants to know where their AGFA reference job is. You can see, well, this one is currently sitting with JH, and it's massively late. So perhaps we need to blow that job up since we never even quoted it, never even ordered it. But all that information appears with just a couple of clicks. It's really, really simple to find. It's also simple to come back to my main screen at any point in time just by clicking the icon up above. So now you can see I've gone through and I've started defaulting other cases to my name or moving things around. And in doing so, it's going to start changing the numbers that appear below. So that gives you a brief introduction to kind of the role center and the login screen and what that looks like. As we jump in, we'll start doing some real work here, and we'll start creating a new case. Very, very simple to do. I can simply click on Case Request. It'll now launch to start building a case for me. If you notice, all the information up above defaults to general. This is simply header information. None of this is required to start building out a job, but it's all going to be relevant at some point in time, so you may as well put it in. So I can say who I'm doing the work for. I'll be doing the work for Candoxy Canada, and I could obviously have multiple contacts with a company if I wanted to, or multiple locations. So this one only has one, and then I can default in if they give me an internal reference number, or I want to put in an internal reference number, then I can do that. For reporting purposes and to start capturing different billing rates. I can add in, for example, is this direct sales or is it agency work? If you charge differently for each one of these are totally set by you. And if you wanted to add one in, I'll open this back up. I can simply click on new. I can put in a new one and I'm off and running. I can also come along on product group and default in any product groups. This is where I'm going to start letting the system have some intelligence to help me plan. Once I select a product group, it's only going to start considering certain pieces of equipment. So if I wanted to look at brochures and magazines for this, for example, then it's only going to consider the pieces of equipment that have brochures and magazines associated with them. And now I need to give it a name. So if I call it my Sabre walkthrough job in PrintVis. So obviously this is an open field. You can make it alphanumeric. You can type in whatever you like. You're off and running. I mentioned before that it will default a next in line ID number because we have to have somewhere to start storing the data, but I have no quote number and no order number yet. Those will change as I change the status code. If I open up my status codes, here are the statuses that I have created inside my fake company. These are, again, totally set by you. You may look at this and say, this is not the workflow that our company goes with. We don't go from status of request to quote. We start straight at quote, or we don't do any web orders. So why would we even have that? Or we don't care about tracking a web error, whatever it may be. Very, very simple to change, to edit, to add, to remove on a per company basis. These are all set by you. But if I come along here, I'm in the status of request, it defaults to say that I'm responsible for it, and some base CRM functionality appears. It gives me a due date of tomorrow. So it tells me that I need to start working on this or have this out of the status of request by tomorrow. If I'm happy with all the information that I've put in up above, I can come down below and actually start doing some work as to what it is that I'm going to be building. I'll simply come along and I will grab in whatever template it is that I've loaded. So I've grabbed a simple template that comes in as a 32-page 4/4, and it even defaults in this template as a very rigid template to even default in a quantity. So in a couple of clicks, I was able to go through based on the fact of my product group up above and what I'm doing, it defaults in to give me this template of 2,500, but I can make changes right here. I don't have to go into the template, make edits or changes, save it, and then what happens if you've overridden the template or you've done something. Any company that's currently using Excel for estimating is familiar with this scenario where someone makes an edit or a change, they blow something up, they change it, and now you can't remember how to go back and fix it, or it's giving you dirty data. But here I can go through, if I have permission, and I can change this from a 32-page to a 40-page. Notice the system will then recalculate and give me new pricing based on the price for doing it for 40 pages. Or if it's not going to be anything on the back, it's going to be posters. Maybe I'd get rid of the colors on the back since it's only going to be colors on the front. All of these fields default all the way over. You can store tons and tons of information. Here's the template that I loaded. So if I wanted to grab a different template, maybe it's not going to be the one that I grabbed, but I want to go through and select an additional template. I can come through and look at it. Or I want to see all the information that goes into making this template. Then I have the ability to go through and find all of the information and say, well, it's not going to be a brochure, it's saddle stitch, it's going to be adhesive. Or it's going to be 1,000 booklets with 4 pages in the size instead of the 32-page, whatever it may be. So again, totally customizable by you. If I'm happy with that, that's great. I'm off and running. Or I can come along over here and start actually looking at certain information, like I can manage this job. So if I want to come along and start managing it and changing some certain things, like adding a new line or looking at the estimating. So let's say I wanted to actually look at the overall job card. I want to see the pricing. What are we doing here with this? You can see when I made that change to take it from a 32-page to a 40, I added in 8 additional pages of text. It defaults as in a slightly different color to let me know that it's a change from the template. And now you can see down below, it's giving me my job information, and I'm looking at my pricing. It tells me the way that it was calculated, and it saves a record initially of how the price was calculated off to the right. So if I were to walk away from my desk and I come back in 5 months and I wanted to know how did I come up with this price, I can see, oh, the system actually calculated it. Or maybe the customer calls you and says, we have a quote for $3,900. Can you beat that? And you want to say, yes, we can do it at $3,850. What does that do overall? It now changes and tells me I'm at a fixed quoted price for the job, saves a record of how it initially calculated, but it starts showing me what it's now changed to my contribution margin, my markup, my net profit. Maybe the business owner has a mandate that nothing walks out the door without a 14% profit margin. So if I wanted to come along and put in 14, then I can see how low can I sell this and still have everybody happy. Later on, I could come back and adjust my calculations, my templates if I needed to make sure that I'm hitting whatever change that the boss has made. But in a simple, you walk out of a production meeting and the boss says nothing leaves without a 14% margin. You don't have to immediately stop all your work, redo your templates. You can come in here and simply make that one change and you're off and running. And again, you come back in 5 hours, 5 months, 5 years, and you see that how did I come up with this number? Oh, I changed the fixed profit percentage. So very, very simple to see all of those things as I would need. Notice it's obviously changed my price here, change my quoted price, and it will default to show me all that information, even here. So if I scroll through, I can see any additional prices have changed, any additional per thousands, all of that. So very, very simple to do. I can also start adding in, based on managing the job, I could do a new version, copy everything over from the version I've created, and perhaps you just want to change the quantity. So they want a price for 5,000 or 10,000. PrintVis does not limit you at all in the number of versions that you're able to put into the system. You can have as many versions as you want, as many areas as you want. So I could come through and quote it 106 times, all inside one case. That's not 106 unique quotes. They could all appear here. I could find them all. I could reference them. You're off and running. Very simple to do. Some other things to point out that I should have shown you earlier. On the case card, you notice a few buttons at the top that say folders and documents. Up here, you can see the folders and documents area allow me to link or store any documents that are relevant to this case, purchase orders, artwork, things like that. We would advise strongly against not storing artwork inside the core ERP. Artwork files for print are gigantic. They will slow your system down over time. So please make sure that you're storing those, but you can reference them in a folder, link to them on your SharePoint or on your cloud drive somewhere else. You can grab them at any point in time and you're off and running. So very, very simple to do. If I wanted to look at what makes up this estimate, I can come back down below and click on estimating. This is going to show me all of the activities that went into this template. Remember before I based on what I was putting in, it defaulted to give me that template, defaulted to give me that pricing. Now I can look and see all of the activities that go into this. Starts off with some admin time. And if I highlight one line up above, notice it will change what appears down below. So based on doing any soft proofing work, you can see how it's calculated, or here's some, it's going to do some computer to plate work, the number of setups, number of plates, all that information. I do have the ability to make changes here if I'm allowed, so no issue or problem with looking at any of that. It's also really easy to add activities into this if I wanted to. Again, I'm not changing the template. I'm just doing it for this one specific job. So it's really, really easy. I can come along and I can grab something out of this. If I wanted to add in a new activity, it defaults in to put in new. I can click and add whatever the dots may be, pick what department it is that I'm in. So if I wanted to come through and grab something out of press or pre-press or printing or anywhere else that's there, very, very simple to grab an activity, to put it in, and the system knows based on these unit numbers that you help to default to where to put it. So for example, you're not going to laminate it before you print it. You're not going to ship it before you pre-press it because you're going to have certain department numbers and you know that certain activities occur in step. It will allow you to split jobs so you don't have to wait for all of printing to end before you begin laminating, or all of production to end before you begin shipping if you have very, very long runs. So don't worry about that. But overall makes it very simple to do. If I'm happy with everything that I've done, if I'm happy with the pricing, if I'm happy with it with all of this, and again, these fact boxes on the right, you could have attached a picture to it. So if a sales rep takes a photo of a logo or something like that, that you want to make sure that it kind of matches, or this is the job with it, then there's no issue or problem. But if I'm happy with everything, I'll simply come along and I'll change the status. It pops up to ask me, do I want to change it to the next logical status that you've defaulted to, which is quote. I say yes. A few things have changed now. Moves it over to quote, defaults it to the status of quote, and it moves it out of my queue and puts it in Sunny Salesman's queue. Still has a due date of tomorrow, so Sunny Salesman has 1 day to review this quote and then come back if he or she needs to and let me know if there's anything missing. There's also the ability up above, if I notice like on more options, I can come along and have fewer options up above or fewer actions if I wanted to copy something or get it out or do whatever it is. But from here, it's really, really simple. I'm in the status of quote. I can come along if I need to, and and managing this, I can actually generate a quote. So it's very simple to push this out. You can integrate your quote with Outlook and have it go directly out of that if you wanted to. All of that, the quote. I won't spend a lot of time kind of showing quotes in this because the quotes are set up as a template that you can default, or we can work with you to mimic your existing quote letters. You may also have certain customers that require quotes to come certain ways, and in doing that, we can obviously mimic those. One customer, the quote has to have their logo on the left or the item number on the right or whatever it may be. No issue or problem with that. If the salesperson likes the quote that you've created, they come up with it, hey, this looks good. Let's go ahead and we will send the quote out. So now we'll tell the system I have sent this quote on to a customer. Defaults it to quote sent, still leaves it inside a salesperson's queue, but gives it a due date of a week from today. Says, hey, you have a week to follow up on this quote. So if you have a salesperson that's out on holiday or they win the lottery and they decide not to come back, or for whatever reason they can't get into the system, they've lost their laptop or they're somewhere that internet isn't working, you can log in, you can see the quotes that they need to follow up on that have a due date of today. You can also have the system flag them. So if you remember back on that landing page at the very beginning, when they look at it, they can log in and actually see the things that are flagged as late. They have no issue or problem seeing those, and you're off and running. The customer calls you back and says, yes, we're ready to move forward with this. You can also change the status here by defaulting to a certain status. Maybe they actually reject the quote, and you ask the salespeople to keep a record of that so you can start storing that internally and see, why are we losing quotes? Are we losing it based on price or based on no open press time or whatever it may be? Start running some numbers and saying, well, what if we bought a new press? Then would we be able to go through and capture all of those lost jobs? And if so, how quickly would that press pay for itself? But very simple to do. But if I say, yes, it's gone from quote sent, and they've actually ready to convert it to an order. I'll come along and I'll select order as my next thing. Now you notice it's filling in. It gives me a quote number and an order number, defaults it to order here, and it moves it over to the coordinators queue. The other thing that you'll notice down below is I have two lines. I have one of them, if I scroll all the way over, one is my quote and one is my order. They may, for example, ask you to quote 2,500. When they place the order, they actually want to order 2,700. So you can come along and make that change here if you needed to and say, well, actually, when they ordered, they want 2,700. And what does that do overall? Well, you can see now we're going to bill them a little bit more because they've asked for 200 extras to go onto the shelf. Not uncommon. It also gives you a chance when you go through and you look at your job costing reports, which is a report that defaults out of the system. You can see here's what we've quoted and here's what they ordered. You can start tracking any variances that would appear in this quote. And then once you begin producing it, you can see your actual job costs would appear here. So a very, very handy report to see, show me the differences in what we quoted, what they ordered, and what we produced. If it's ready at this point in time to go, I could come along. For example, maybe I need to purchase. You guys might do just-in-time purchasing. I have a purchase guide that defaults up above. I simply click on the purchase guide. It's going to launch my purchase guide for me, and it tells me here are the two items that I need to produce this. I need this silk paper and this silk paper. If I needed to come through, I could actually default and grab them and start doing purchase orders off of this if I wanted to. I can come along and create purchases once I select a vendor that I'm going to order from. So if I want to come along and say, well, what vendor am I ordering this from, or vendor number, then it defaults and shows me all of my vendors. Here's my typical vendor that I buy it from. I don't have any default vendors, which is why this is showing up, but I could have vendors appear here. So here's, I'll say that I'm going to order this from Paper Empire, and I'll order this item from the laminator. May make sense, may not, but anyway, it defaults to have those in. So you can see here's the customer, here's what we ordered. If I wanted to go through and actually create purchase orders off of this, I have the ability, or I can create requisitions. You might have someone in the company who goes through and does purchasing. If they go through and do that, everyone can create requisitions. The purchasing agent can review all of the requisitions and make that order to try to get your best pricing for you. But if everything else looks good, then you can come along and you can actually create your pricing or your purchase orders from here, or I can default to go through and select and create my purchase orders here. It'll start showing me my created purchase orders down below. So if I have the ability, it's really, really simple. Come through and create. Once I've done that, then I can actually go through. Once I receive it, I can go back and post it. So there's no issue or problem in any of these areas whatsoever. Again, it makes it really, really simple to go through and do. Here are my two purchase orders that the system in the back of the line created. It lists them as order type. Once I've gone through and receive it, again, it'll show up and posted. But that's as easy as it is to do just-in-time purchasing. A few things that I kind of skipped over that I'll spend some time coming back to look at. If I wanted to look, for example, at the specifications for how this is going to produce, you can see up above it shows me my end quantity that I need, my scrapped quantity, my total quantity. I can actually take a look at impositions if I wanted to. How is this going to produce? What is if I wanted to adjust my parameters, my gripper edge or my pull mark or my trim, or I want to change the way it's going to print from work and turn to work and tumble or something like that, then I have the ability to do that. And I can make any of those changes here and see exactly what that's going to do for my end quantity and my scrap quantity. I can also have like a workflow. Here's a job that's going to go a couple different places that all marries back together for cross folding and then saddle stitching and out the door. So lots of visibility, lots of graphics to try to make it easier on people as they go into it. If I wanted to come through and actually look at shipments, I do have the ability to import off of shipment lists. So if I needed to import, I can simply grab a ship to location, or I can import a shipment list. You may do work for like big box retail. They send you a list of 3,000 stores. Obviously, you don't want to have to key in 3,000 stores, so you can go through and you can load them in out of shipments. But really, really simple to do. You can also split shipments as well. If everything looks good, we've gone through and actually created an order. It's in order. The coordinator has placed all the items to order for it. Now we're ready to actually plan it. So I can come along and I can move it over to plan, which tells me it's ready to plan. Takes it away from the coordinator, and here's my first pop-up. Tells me, wait, you've done a lot of work. We've put in a quote. We've converted it to an order. We've actually updated the order quantity. We've ordered paper for it, but you never actually told me when we needed to go through and do this. When do they actually need this job by? Totally something that is logical to have the system ask you. I can come in and say, well, they need it by May 31st. I'll default in to give it that date, or I could pick any date that I would want. Now when I move it over to planning, when I come through and I actually want to look at the planning side of things, it'll open up and allow me to see a couple of ways to plan this. I can rough plan it. I can plan it based on start date. I can plan it based on delivery date. How late can I plan it and still get it done? Or I can plan around bottlenecks. A bottleneck may obviously be, just as it says, an area where things are going to slow down. Your laminator, you may have a Zund cutter, that's something like that. That may be a fantastic piece of equipment that just runs a little bit slower than your presses. So you want to make sure you plan around that to hit all of your due dates. So if I wanted to come through and plan based on a requested delivery date of the 31st, then I can go through and actually plan it based on start. How quick can I start this and get it done? Or how late can I start it and get it? If I wanted to start this job, we'll start it on Monday. So if we start everything on Monday and we tell it to plan as quickly as it can from Monday to make sure we get it done by the 31st, there's no issue or problem. You can see it was able to plan everything for me. So if I scroll over, it's showing me, and you can make these windows obviously bigger. So I'll make that a little bit bigger, a little bit easier to read. But I'll start everything on the 17th. I'll finish it on the 18th. I've got a couple of things that weren't planned because these are not pieces of equipment that I can plan. And then you'll see some efficiencies that I've built in. So for example, on my print master, it says I'm only going to be running it for 3.1 hours, but I'm going to block 3.72 hours because obviously you're going to have setup and tear down time. You want to make sure that you're not getting your production lines in trouble. So no issues or problems with that. Or if I want to come through and say, well, they want it on the delivery date. So I'll go through and I'll replan everything based on the delivery date. How late can I start it and still get the job done? So here you can see it's starting to work backwards. And here's all of my delivery items that are coming through. Planning done multiple ways. We can also schedule a separate time to do another demo to show you planning. This is obviously planning one job at a time. Some companies have an entire planning department that will go through and plan. And just like that grid view that we've seen several places with Excel, I can come along up here and I can go through and type in the word plan. and I can go through and see, well, let me see my order planning. So if I want to go through and plan all of my order planning, then I can see I want to plan by department, or let me jump back and type in the word plan and go look at one more place for planning. So lots of areas to see planning. If I wanted to see PrintVis planning, for example, then I can see based on the product group, the quantity, the additional quantity, I want to plan it based on the number of colors or pages or substrate. Any of those things are options that have the ability to plan. Just not a lot of data in my system to plan at this point in time. Make sure you check out our other video, by the way, to see what the shop floor looks like. Shop floor workers have a very clean user interface. They can simply have touch screens where they go through and select what they're working on and have the system start gathering all of their job costing. So really, really nice from that standpoint. Once it's all been planned, it's ready to go over to production. So I can move it over to any of these departments that are actually in production, or I can simply click on change status. Yes, I've changed it to plan. I'll change it now. Whoops. Back over to, let me jump to invoicing. We'll say that it's actually ready to invoice. So if I wanted to go through and say that it's out there ready to go, then it's in folding, it's in cutting, it's in binding, it's in pre-press, it's in any of these, or I'll move it over to invoicing. Moves it over to the accountant's desk. The accountant now, their queue, that number block at the front would change. And it's very simple. He or she would come along in the invoicing guide. They would select new invoice. It's going to start building a new invoice for you based on who the customer is. If you have the permission to do it, you can come through and actually post this invoice. If I wanted to post and send it, then I can click post and send. Do I want to send this via email with a PDF? I'll say sure. Now it's going to create this. There's given me an error because I haven't set it up to my email yet, but very simple. So you can see how easy it is to create invoices, to send them out via email and have it all go out the door. That's it in a nutshell. So now you can see when I jump back through, if I close all this down and I come back in and I wanted to see my overall PrintVis Unlimited, my cases coordinator has increased because I've been working on that case that I'm still listed as a coordinator in all day, but it has not moved it. I've actually completed one. I've moved it all the way through into invoicing. So here's where you start to get a picture of kind of what the company looks like and what the workflow is. And that concludes our PrintVis demo. I really, really appreciate everybody's time today and consideration. Thank you so much. And also make sure that you follow our channel. You can click right here to stay in tune with more demos that are coming up or see other videos that we produce here. Please reach out if you have any questions and have a fantastic day.